Akhil, good to see you again, and thanks for coming along. Appreciate that. Appreciate you taking a bit of time to talk about what you're doing. And it's your business, very topical area. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. So for the folks
Thank
that
you.
might be listening, I mean, let's start off with why don't you tell people about what you're trying to achieve with your business?
Yeah, sure. No, thank you for having me, Paul. It's very kind of you. So I work with an organization called Earth 51. We are a small business. We are a think tank born in the UK, but we tend to do most of our work outside of the UK. About 90% of all our work happens outside of the UK. And over the last 2 years, we started to bring some of that work back home. And we do a bunch of different things. We do a bit of education. And at the same time, we also spend time with the corporates and public sector and governments to give them advisory services, as well as creating a lot of digital narratives to help them tell their story. And all of this is focused around three areas. One is human systems, the second is planetary systems, and the third is technology systems.
Hmm.
So we work in sustainability and responsible AI, and also around social equity, specifically gender equity. So these are the various pillars that we're trying to help organizations get better at. Sometimes they need a bit of help, and we are able to inject, a catalyst of change from outside.
Okay. I mean, I get the idea. I mean, I've worked in an organization like that many years ago, so I've got a good understanding of what that's like. But tell me, what is it that makes your business distinctive from all those other think tanks and consultancy businesses that are around? I mean, what is it that's special and distinctive about your particular approach?
Um, when we first started this business in 2019, there weren't too many organizations like us around. You had think tanks that researched the macroeconomic climate and then reported back to governments or policymakers. But the way we try to approach it is there's been a lot of advisory services that have been provided to organizations in the form of management consultancies like the McKinseys and Bains of the world. And then you've got technology consultants. But there seemed to be a gap with more and more pressure on organizations to look at, how can they become more purpose-led. So organizations were being told to do better, but there was no help in that particular area, and that's why we were born. So I think we're different from that perspective in terms of there are not many like us. There are not too many who are sandwiched between uh, trying to drive profit and also trying to move the needle on purpose-led initiatives. So there are few like us. I wish there were more like us, but there are few like us. The other piece I think which has been remarkable for us is we one of the few organizations that were born in the UK but tend to do so much of our work outside. And that's because we've just followed the wind. We found that Northern Europe, for instance, was more accepting and definitely more innovative when it came to sustainability transformation in 2020, 21. So we tended to gravitate there. And over time, we found businesses starting to inject more purpose into their bottom line inside of the UK and also Southern Europe, and now in the US. So it's become more topical across mass markets. So we tend to move where markets are trying to or who have already gotten to or journeyed to that point. So I would say that's unique because sometimes we're in a we're in a room with a bunch of other UK companies, and very few of them have actually stepped foot outside. For us, it's the other way around. We're trying to figure out how to work in the UK. So I think that's a bit unique for us.
Sure. Okay. And in terms of what you're trying to achieve, I mean, what is the outcome that you want to get to? I mean, just give us a sense of what you're trying to, the nut that you're trying to crack, if you like.
Yeah, sure. So historically, so when we talk about purpose is essentially companies well, in this case, businesses trying to do good. And historically, it's always been about charities and foundations
Yeah.
and nonprofits. And if you look at the amount of money that's gone into foundations and charities across the world, The social entrepreneur space gets about $500 billion of money to spend every year. That's been stagnant for the last 25 years. 500 billion is a drop in the ocean when you look at our entire GDP at about 110 trillion dollars. It's a very small piece that starts to move the needle on social good. Actually, it doesn't move the needle on social good. um, so what we discovered is that with 70% of the world's GDP coming in from private sector, if we could move the needle even by 10% inside of organizations from within, we'd be able to achieve a 30x impact across
Wow.
the board. And
Wow.
what we're not trying to do is get organizations to stop doing what they're doing, stop making money, and stop chasing profits. You should do that.
Mm.
But with some of the money that you make, invest it back into people, into markets, into upliftment of society at large. And I think that that guidance has to come from external sources such as us if it's not coming internally. So that's our vision and our objective to try and get business leaders to start thinking differently. So of course, go ahead and make some money, but same time, park some of that aside and try and create societal good. And what tends to happen is if you do that, you end up making more money. So it's actually more beneficial and more profitable to be sustainable in the long run. So
So,
yeah, those are the angles we play on.
okay, and I get that, and I totally understand the logic behind that. But when I mean, that's a big goal.
Yeah.
500 billion, it may be small beer in the overall economy, the 100 trillion or whatever it is, but it's still a lot of change that you're trying to talk about. You're trying to get done in those other in all those other companies that are out there. What's the main obstacle that you're going to have to overcome to achieve those kind of goals? I mean, what is the big thing that you've got to deal with?
I would say not being taken seriously,
Right.
not having a brand equivalent to Fortune 500.
Um,
So you,
sorry, why don't they take you
yeah.
seriously? That's a really interesting point you've made. Why don't people take that seriously?
Because we don't have the brand equity of of an Amazon or a Walmart or a
Right.
Microsoft or a Patagonia. We're a small business. We have 29 people, and but we're chipping away at it. And it's not just us. There are many like us who are chipping away at it. We are coming at it from an educational standpoint. Others are coming at it from grassroots solutions, and we work with many of them. We collaborate with them. But I think the world seems to have the global 2000 in their view, and if you're not part of that, it's difficult to get at it. And that's why small businesses like us have to punch above our weight and try and drive change.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you use that phrase punching above your weight. I mean, you're successful now. Was there ever a point on the journey when you thought, this may not work out the way I'd hoped?
Yeah, so we launched in August 2019, which was 6 months before COVID. And at that time, when we entered the first lockdown in March, at that time, companies weren't focused on sustainability transformation. It was the last thing on their minds. They were trying to make sure their employees were safe and they weren't losing as many jobs. So it's been a very difficult transition. And from a growth objective, we switched to a survival objective, where I would say 99% of businesses like us did not get through COVID, unfortunately. And our only outcome at the end of 2021, 22 was to try and survive that, to survive COVID. So that was very difficult. And in fact, during that time, one of our key revenue streams was born purely as a result of not giving up and trying to pivot and do something different, and listen to what the market needs and try and develop a solution for it. So I think that was a very difficult time. I think that also gave us a lot of confidence to be able to tackle what comes next. And that's held us in good stead. So we have difficult months, we have difficult quarters, but we're able to constantly look ahead. And I think that's our biggest strength, to look
Sure.
2, 3, 4 years ahead in terms of what's coming. And if you look at that 4 year radar screen or roadmap, you also find that it differs by region. So what might be current in Finland is going to be current in the UK in about 18 months' time. So we are able to see that holistic picture from a global lens.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting you describe that kind of those ups and downs. I mean, people have
Yeah,
described it to me as like riding a roller coaster. I mean, what is it that gets you out of bed every day to ride the roller coaster? Because it's a tough gig, certainly emotionally.
it is. It
I mean,
is.
what is it that motivates you personally? I mean, I get the big picture, but you personally, what is it that motivates you to ride that roller coaster and to stick at it through thick and thin?
Yeah. I remember when things were difficult, Paul. One example is me coming home quite dejected, and my daughter comes to the door and gives me a hug and says, "Papa, I'm really proud of you because you're trying for the rest of us." And I think that's how I feel. I'm a parent. I've got two kids, a boy and a girl. And I've made a lot of money for some very large organizations for very long. What gets me out is as a father who's getting older, who's leaving, this world to the next generation. It's almost my duty to try and do something with it. So I've got the aptitude, the business acumen, the skills, and the network. Why can't I put that to good use and try and create something where I can get leaders to start to evolve and change and do the right thing? So that's what gets me out. I know
So
my,
you're
sorry,
saying
go
it's
ahead.
about legacy.
It is about legacy, but not my legacy so much. It's about giving back and paying it forward. This isn't about me. This is about the next generation that's coming through. And I think that's part of our responsibility as leadership to start looking ahead. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to get on the podcast and relay my voice if anyone's hearing this, that if you're a leader, if you're getting to a certain point in your career, start giving back, help others, who haven't been so fortunate, throw the ladder down, let them climb. So it's things like that which appeal to me now at this stage of my career. And it's not about my personal legacy, it's about genuinely giving back and paying it forward.
Let me ask about, you mentioned the leadership thing. I mean, and you spoke earlier on about having to pivot.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about the CEO's job is how do you cut through all the noise, all the distractions, all the 1 billion other things that you could be doing to work out where you're going? I mean, it seems to me it's very easy to say this is the, but it's much harder to work out the right direction for your company at this point in time with your resources, your people, your markets. I mean, it's easy to say, it's much more difficult to do. I mean, what's your take on that process?
I wear two lenses, and sometimes they get convoluted between each other. The first lens is something I like to look ahead in terms of what's happening over the next 2, 3 years. So we're talking about AI at the moment and agentic AI and robotic AI, and what's on the frontier is quantum computing. So how is that going to start to impact? So we've already started looking at technologies that are still yet to arrive, are here in some shape and form, but are not used for mass consumption. So one lens is looking ahead in terms of what's going on with the world. The other piece is making sure that you execute correctly right now. So I try and spend more of my time wherever possible to start looking ahead. And at the same time, you have to make sure that you're getting whatever you're doing right now for this quarter, for till the end of the year, H2, you're getting that sorted and you're executing well on it. The one thing that keeps me, which I tell my team as well, pipeline is more important than revenue. So a healthy pipeline gives you an opportunity for multiple conversations. And you might be seeding conversations today for what might benefit you end of next year. But continue to do that. And for me, a healthier pipeline is better than a dip in revenue. So those are the business indicators, but I think always have a lens because you also command a lot of credibility and respect with your customers because unfortunately for them, they're also looking right down in terms of how do I close this quarter? What does month end look like? But when you give them a flavor of what's yet to come, or you give them a trailer of what's yet to come, they're able to sometimes lift their heads up and say, "Ah, okay, so that's something I need to keep on my, FY26 planning, for instance, or 27 planning." And that gives us the strategic thought leadership that, I believe we're good at. So yeah, that's the way I look at this with two
And
lenses.
Okay, thank you. And what is it, or rather, what has been the main influence on you and the way you think about the job as the CEO? I mean, what would you say has influenced that approach?
Um, in what sense, Paul, are you
Well, in the
specifically
sense that,
pointing
you
to?
know, how did you, people's view of what the CEO does is different. I talk to a lot of CEOs. I mean, they've got very different views on what the job is. I mean, what is
Yeah.
it that influenced you to arrive at the conclusions that you've arrived at? Is that experience? Is it somebody else that
Okay.
you've worked with? Is it a book? I mean, what is
Okay.
it that's.
Um, I would say I don't know what's happened, but a couple of years back, I started to question everything. I've gone through 25 years of a corporate life. Um, the initial chunk of that, I ended up just doing what I was told. And towards the latter half, I started to question things around me, saying, how can things be done better? The more I questioned it, I found that not everyone always had the answers. So I started to take it upon myself to almost have an entrepreneurial spirit within an organization. And I worked with very large organizations, everywhere between 5,000 people to 300,000 people. And I think one of the biggest challenges I found in a corporate setup was that sadly, the entrepreneurial spirit or, the innocence is lost.
Yeah,
And I found that triggered a lot of my thought process. So I don't know what happened. Maybe I matured a little bit later, but I started to see patterns, and I could connect dots far easier than many of my colleagues and peers around me. I was able to see what was coming, and I was able to get our organizations to make full use of it, and use that opportunity. And the more I did it, I also started to sense a balance which was a little bit out of space in the corporate setup. And by chance, I started getting into women in leadership programs because working in cybersecurity, I found very few women were actually working in cybersecurity. So I started to spend more time in that space. As I did that, customers picked up on it and said, "Hey, I like what you're doing. Can you come and talk to our people on it in the tech front?" So I was cross-pollinating thoughts, ideas, and it was all coming together. It was cooking in my head. And I think what's in the last 10 years, in the last decade, I've been able to see patterns far quicker. I don't know why. I remember my father could do it back in his time, and I wasn't aware of how he could see stuff. And sometimes I wouldn't understand what he said. But today I feel like I followed in those footsteps, and I'm able to see patterns in terms of how the market's moving, what happens with the political climates, what is the economic fallout as for A, B, C, and D. How is technology affecting all of it? So I'm able to see the overall system, and I think that's become a strength today.
mm,
But it's okay to see it. So what? How can you take that and inject it in good
yeah,
doses into
yeah,
corporates, governments, public sector, etc.? I think that's our strength. And for me, that's the latest learning is able to not think about us, but about to think about Paul, your podcast. What is important to you? How do
yeah,
we make this interesting? How do we make you successful? And
yeah.
I think that's been something that I'm desperately trying to get others to succeed rather than trying to get us to succeed. And that's worked for us, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, you talked about helping others to succeed. Let's talk about the kind of team thing. I mean, you've got 30 odd people or whatever, 35 people or whatever it is. I mean, let me start. How do you get that? What's your take on how you get the right people on the bus?
Um, I had a very different take when I was in the corporate setup, and today I think very differently. I like people who are hungry to learn. I think that's my number one priority. If s- I think skills can be taught,
Mm,
and I think sometimes we don't understand um, our own potential until we were actually in the deep end. So for me, if someone has got an aptitude to embrace change, and we always had it at a value system whenever we were in a corporate setup, embrace change. I never really got the meaning of that till now. I think you genuinely have to embrace change. It's a bit like playing golf. You hit a ball, you expect the west, but you walk up to your ball and you say, okay, you played as it lies. You just embrace it, and then you
mm,
embrace the game, and you actually play better. And I feel that's what I've been able to do in this setup. And I look for people who are able to do that, not get thrown off very easily. And find and become very outcome focused. It's not so important to to follow the process, saying, I sent 6 emails today. Okay, great. But what's the purpose of it? Or I'm trying to get a restaurant booking. Okay, so I called them up, no one picked up. No, that's a process. How do we make sure that we can all have dinner and we're all able to get there? So the outcome is really important. And I find people who are hungry are able to get to the outcome. And I think that's interesting for us in terms of how we hire.
Sure.
So yeah, hunger to learn is number one on my agenda.
Okay. I get that. And curiosity, I guess, goes sits alongside that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Let me ask you, once you've got them on the bus, how do you get them in the right seats? I mean, I think that's always a bit more complicated as well, because sometimes when people start, they turn out to be different over time. I mean, how do you get the right people in the right seats on your bus?
That's very difficult because what you expect is, sometimes is not what you actually see in reality.
Mm,
So we've been slow to it, and we've actually introduced a working relationship on a contractual level before it actually gets permanent. The other fallout was COVID, where we had to let people go because of trying to save the business. We never wanted to enter that situation again. So, in fact, a lot of the times we contract people into our organization. We are able to see how they work. We're able to see their aptitude to learn with us. And at the same time, we constantly encourage those contractors to work elsewhere as well. So please have 2 or 3 gigs, not to worry. We are not part of that mindset. We're trying to get people to only work with us. I think you should have very disparate skills, and we're happy with it as long as the outcome can be delivered to us. So we've had to evolve and change the way we work with people. And at the same time, we want somebody to be professional, just deliver on time, etc. And then once they're able to contract in over a period of time, they themselves are, keen to grow along with us.
mm.
And I think that's been working better. It's almost like a working interview, which reduces some of the risk of hiring somebody and then, there seems to be a fallout for whichever reason.
Sure. I mean, you touched on development there. I mean, it's great, get great people on the bus, get them in the right seat, but then you've also got to keep them growing, keep them
Yeah.
developing. I mean, what's your take on how you develop a very effective team? Because you've got a relatively small team, but you're trying to have quite a big impact. I mean, the assumption is that you then need a team, a pretty effective team to do that. I mean, what's your take on building a team?
I would say building an effective team, you need to chase the passion that the person has. So make sure you have the person who feel, because each one is built slightly differently.
Yeah.
My interests are quite different to somebody else's who's perhaps on the technical level. But I also feel that even though you might be a technologist at heart, you could still, find areas to grow in. So we tend to experiment a lot and move people around. So someone might be starting on the education front with us, but after a while we ask them to tag team or shadow somebody who's working on the digital narrative side of it for us. And if not, then somebody on the advisory side, somebody wants to do part of the events, etc. So we try and move people around and see what they're comfortable with. We don't want to hire somebody for one particular role. We'd love to have a bunch of all-rounders who can do all of it. And to be honest, Paul, given we are a small business, we tend to do a lot of different things.
Mm,
So I hadn't a clue about finance before I worked in Earth 51. In terms of understanding the broader scales of taxation and international taxation, I've learned a lot. In fact, first and foremost, I've had to learn a lot before anyone else. So I think that's been very important. So if you're hungry to learn, you learn multiple skills, and we want people to have multiple skills. To give you an example, we had a social media person, a social media manager, but it was important for that social media person to also get involved with the education side of it and understand the business. And I feel that cross pollination of skills is critical because they leave us at some point, and when they leave, they'll be a much more well-rounded individual than applying for another social media role somewhere and then going on that pathway
yeah.
just in PR or what have you, or a particular brand of marketing. No, do all of it and just see what you're good at. Plus, the industry is changing so much. Markets are
Yeah.
changing so much. You might be, for instance, if you're a coder or a technologist where you've been programming in Python for the last few years. Today, sadly, a lot of the jobs are being made redundant due to AI being used for code. So what was your plan B? What else did you have in the bag of skills? And I think that's really important for us to not only help them in our organization, but what happens over the next 5 years. So it's really important to cross-pollinate those skills within the
Sure.
organization.
Sure. And one of the things you touched on earlier on was that, the ups and downs of, I
Yeah.
mean, it's well, it's not easy, but most people can manage a team when the going's good.
Yeah.
What about when things get difficult or problems occur or disasters happen? I mean, what's your take on, if you like, leading through difficult, turbulent times? I mean, give us your take on that issue. Because that happens a lot, doesn't it? Things change and things go wrong.
Yeah, Paul, I think that's been actually, I've had to learn that more than anyone else. And it starts with me, to be honest. I think it's about the right energy, Paul. So, what you'll see is, for me, it's like a dance. When things are good, it's fast, peppy music, and you have to move to it.
Mm.
And then when things slow down, you have to be able to slow dance as well. And it's about building patience into the system. I feel that you can work twice or thrice as hard in a tough climate, but that's it. Anything more and you break the system.
Yeah.
So we're very conscious of that. I think we keep putting in the good work. I also feel we've learned that in quiet times, we build for the future. So at this, if you're having a quiet quarter, or currently there's summer holidays in Europe, we're trying to build for when things pick up in September, October. So how do we build during the quiet periods? So we're staying busy, and we also know that it's cyclical and seasonal. It's fine. Nothing to panic about. Stay patient, and keep doing what you're doing. Focus on the process. On something like a cricket match, given it's so current right now. It's a new ball. It's swinging. Just stay over
Yeah.
there, get the ball hold, and then when
Yeah.
your time will come. And I think that's something I've had to learn before I started. It's unfair to pressurize anyone else. I just mentioned to you, I was at the gym before this. It's about going and getting your a clear headspace and getting some exercise, doing other things besides the job. And I think that's really important. Talking to people, it's very difficult to do. I kid you not, especially having a small business. But you have to do it. It's almost like you have to book time, and you have to manage your own mindset. So dancing to the tune, I think, is key for us.
Yeah. No, I can certainly see the logic of that. Let me turn to customers. I mean,
Yeah.
what does, from your perspective, I know you've got more, but what does a great customer look like to you?
That's a great question. I would say a great customer is a hungry customer to learn, somebody who wants to learn. Like you said, curious. A customer who's curious is a great customer.
Mm.
I love that because they come to you with an open mind, saying, "Okay, I've got some issues. I've got these problems. How can you help me?" I find those customers that already have a preconceived notion or a mindset are difficult to work with, or it takes longer to try and break through and explain to them that there is another opportunity which they might be missing. It's a bit like teaching children new skills sometimes, where you have somebody who's good at a game, but you want them to try and explore others. And then again, I keep using the word, but cross-pollinate skills across those different sports. And I find customers that are hungry to learn and are curious, they're very open-minded.
Mm.
And also, so I'll give you an example. We work with Amazon Web Services. They're a large company with 300,000 people, but they have a value system where no team is allowed to make any decisions, which is larger than anyone sharing a pizza, any team sharing a pizza.
Mm.
So you have anywhere between 3 to 6 people as part of a decision-making cohort. Compare that to some of the other organizations we work with, where it is a constant drip feed of decision, or non-decision after non-decision after non-decision. So even though a 300,000 people large company can behave and work like a startup, and they've got this coinage which says every day is day one, and I love it. So if more companies can learn from that, that you might be a big corporate with a lot of muscle power, but you can think like a startup, you have it all. And I think that's the importance of we love working with customers like that because they're hungry and they come to the table saying, what else can we do? What are you seeing in the market? Bring the learning back to us. We love that.
What do great customers say about you? How would they view you?
I think they appreciate knowledge we bring from across industries and governments and regions. That is something which is difficult for them to get to because they're very good. They're specialists in what they're doing.
Yeah,
You might have a marketing person in the UK who's focused on the UK market, but there are activities taking place outside which are going to hit the market at some point in time, and we can bring some of that learning. The same with sales teams or finance teams. We are able to bring a lot of information to the table which they have perhaps not seen. Plus, if you look at it, every customer or every organization is very focused on their own product portfolio. Given our line of work, we work across every industry, and we are able to almost thread in or be the bridge between their customer base and their product portfolio, and are able to bridge that beautifully. And I think that's our core strength. So I think that's one of the key compliments we keep getting is, you bring a lot of credibility to the table, you bring a lot of learning, and I don't believe in a word called thought leadership, even though we throw it so loosely. It's just about understanding what else is going on and what you might be missing, and
yeah,
you're able to, navigate towards that path.
yeah. Let's move the conversation on to markets rather than individual customers.
Okay.
I mean, you're working in lots of different jurisdictions. When I talk to CEOs, on the one hand, there's CEOs that say, if I'm going to go into a new country or a new jurisdiction, I do a lot of research, I get boots on the ground, I spend a lot of money, etc., etc. On the other hand, some CEOs say, well, I just follow demand. There's a customer over there and he wants help, so I'm going to go and do that. Where are you on that spectrum in terms of market entry and the kind of risks involved in going into different countries, working with different types of companies? I mean, give us your take on that issue.
Yeah. To be honest, I've never thought of it as a risk. Maybe because of the line of work that we have, it's services. And to be honest, the product portfolio we have in terms of education courses is very easy to circumnavigate the globe in terms of any country you choose, any continent. We've almost picked a customer irrespective of where they are and gone and worked with them. So we worked in Malawi, Tanzania, Bangladesh, Singapore, Japan, US. It doesn't matter. The only thing which gets us sometimes is the tax system. And even that's been automated now. So if someone's buying from us in
Yeah.
India compared to Germany, it's a different tax, it's a different tax brackets based on how much revenue's already gone into that country or we pulled out from that country. So I think but that's been automated now. We have various companies, like Quaderno, etc., which automates it all. So we've been fortunate from that perspective, where any little hurdle has been navigated through software, but it's never been a risk. I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
Mm.
And it's also given us legs in continents which others haven't really ventured into as far, especially in Africa. In fact, recently we started to do more work in West Africa. We've done some in South Africa. We've done a lot in East Africa. And there's so much opportunity there, and people are coming to us to learn in terms of what is Europe investing in right now, what's happening with the AI wave. Bring some of that learning back to us. We work with private equity firms who are trying to understand where their investment portfolios or where the next wave of investment portfolios coming through. So there's so much of learning because of the wide diaspora of companies and countries and continents we're able to work in. I wouldn't say it's a risk; it's a massive opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. And as you've grown, as you've gone into more and more jurisdictions, I mean, has the business evolved?
Yes.
Is going into new places having an impact on how you think about and do what you do? I mean, how does that work?
Yes, 100%. I would say the way we see it, we started to look a little more eastwards recently, purely because their GDP growth on average is about 4.5%, 5%.
Yeah.
Whereas we find Europe is stagnating to quite an extent. Point one, point two isn't really moving the needle, or you can't smell the growth, to be honest. And we've seen the political climate in the world today. We have to spread our risk across multiple baskets. So that's been a learning for us in terms of what works in one country doesn't work in another necessarily. But what's also interesting is it's almost like a restaurant. We've got a menu card of offerings. what might be relevant today and might be relevant tomorrow to the same country. So, for instance, a few years back, we were talking about advisory services, or we were working with, nonprofits and government organizations in Malawi around advisory services. That was about 3 years back. And I think last month we are now talking to the same organization in Malawi around education services. So, what we've developed in Europe and the US has now started to be applicable and be relevant in Eastern Africa. So it's just about timing it right and seeing where everyone is on that journey. And so I think that's been a big learning. It also keeps it interesting for us. We love to be at the forefront of what's coming. So we get a lot of customers from northern Germany tell us, "What are you doing around quantum computing?" And we're thinking, "Hold on, the world's not there as yet. We're looking at it, but we're not there as yet." If I took quantum computing to Malawi, it would be a very different conversation. So
Yeah.
it's about staying relevant to where the market is.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of, I mean, doing business in Singapore, it's very different from doing business in Malawi. I mean, how do
Yeah.
you handle the kind of cultural nuances of working in so many different jurisdictions?
Um, that's a good question. We haven't really thought of it too much, but I would say go slow. If anyone needed
Mm,
nugget of advice is go slow, build trust. And one of the markets that we did that with was Finland. We didn't realize how different Finland was compared to other Scandinavian countries.
right.
If to give you an example, then I would stand and present to a room full of people in Copenhagen or Malmo in Sweden. And during Q&A, I'd get about 10 to 15 questions. But when I do that in Helsinki, it would be silence, which was very awkward.
Wow.
But they
And
would all connect with us.
and why does that happen? That's really interesting. Why would that happen
It,
in Finland?
it's a very different culture, even though we think it's similar, but it's different. The Nordics are different. And in Finland, people take a while to trust. But once you've built that trust,
Right.
they're your best friends. They want to work with you. They invite you to their homes. It's a beautiful culture. But we weren't. It's not a very open culture in terms of it's not very loud. It's understated. Elegance and thoughtfulness.
Sounds
And you'll
great.
find that people do, yeah, it's
Sounds
amazing.
great.
But it's been fascinating for us. And today we're working with, the Minister for Equality and Jobs in Finland. But it's taken a while for them to trust us. So it's not a market that you would just walk into and say, "Here we have," and they wouldn't be interested. But that's what I'm trying to say is go slow, build trust, do the right thing, do what's important for them. And the same in Malawi, for instance, very different. We're trying to work on girls' education over there. A lot of girls get married very young. So education keeps them away from an early marriage, which would mean early childbirth, which would mean larger families, which would mean more poverty. So how can we drive education into rural areas of Malawi and Tanzania, for instance? So very different requirements, but we need to understand what they need. It's not about us. And I think if we can always, not measure the world with one yardstick, that's critical. So just same with plastic. For instance, there was this time about 3 years back when if I used a plastic bottle in the UK, it was shunned upon. I get that completely. But the same plastic bottles are being used in sub-Saharan Africa because there's no piped water. They are only using plastic to ferry water 20 kilometers. So I find it very easy for people to quickly judge. And my whole point is don't judge so quickly. Try and understand where they're coming from and help them evolve and change. So that's what we've been doing. We've been trying to listen better to different cultures.
Sure. I mean, you've talked on a few occasions in this interview about the importance of learning to you and how valuable that is. I mean, is there, when you look back on the journey that you've been on, I mean, is there anything that's really pushed you out of your comfort zone where you thought, I didn't think I'd be doing this? I mean, have you had any experiences like that?
I'm trying to think of one. Actually, I haven't had an experience in this role um, with Earth 51 where I didn't think I'd be doing this. Maybe because I don't know what I'll be doing tomorrow. There are instances when I have to introduce what Earth 51 does, and to be honest, I don't know what we do. In terms of we do a lot of different things based on what customers require. We we to your point, perhaps we didn't think we'd get into education. That's not an area we were looking at. We didn't think everything that we're doing today, we didn't think we'd be doing. We started in advisory and we got into education. From education, we've gone into digital narratives. Now we work with marketing teams across the world. It's just listening to what the customer
Yeah.
needs. It's
Yeah.
listening to where the gap is and trying to fill that gap. So I don't know what we'll be doing tomorrow, but on essence, we're a think tank.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you about the other side to that question. I mean, when you look back on the journey, I mean, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made? If you can talk about it publicly, that is.
Yeah, I would say not shouting enough from the rooftops about what we can do.
Right.
That's the biggest mistake we've made, and I would say that accountability lies with me. We've not been very good with marketing ourselves. We've never lost a client. We've grown. We'd like to grow older with the few people that we work with. We love that. We built a lot of trust. But we've never really told our story. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm making a conscious effort to start to go out there and talk about it.
Okay.
Because a lot of investors are coming to us and corporates are coming to us saying, you should really be talking about this because people want to hear what you have to say about how we can be better businesses. So we're starting to do more of that. And I would say that's the biggest mistake we did. My wife works in marketing. She's always told me how important it is. And I've not believed it so far. So it's
So
all
you're
coming
in
around
trouble
now.
then. Okay. Well, let's do that. I mean, just tell me what are the achievements that you're most proud of? I mean, yeah, you've probably got quite a few, and I know you've been at this for a few years now. I mean, what are the top two or three achievements that you're most proud of?
Hmm. I think not having not drawing any lines around what we can do
Right.
has allowed us to achieve things which we never thought we had any skill in. And I think that's been amazing for us to not, how do I say it, not have any guardrails for us as a business saying we'll only do this or we are this. So not having those guardrails has allowed us to go in multiple areas and help multiple different types of customers in many different countries.
Mm.
And I've loved that. For me, that's been a wonderful learning exposure. And I'd also go as far as saying that I've learned more in the last, 3 years than I have in the previous 30 years of my corporate
Wow.
career. Because uh,
Why do you say that? That's a really interesting thing to say. I mean, why has that happened? Why have you learnt more in the last 3 years than in the last 30?
I've learned to become an entrepreneur. I've learned
Okay.
that, the person selling groceries on in a farmer's market, you know, it understands business far better than when I did when I was in the corporate world. Um, Purely because they're looking at the entire lineup of, seeding, harvesting, distribution, production, distribution, retailing, all of it. That value chain of a business only comes to light when you become an entrepreneur. And I wish I'd had, or if I have an opportunity, I think anyone working inside a corporate can be an entrepreneur, but manage their own business unit in a way that they can grow it, from end to end. I find that too often we're given siloed jobs.
Yeah.
You're responsible for marketing. That's an ABM. That's an ABM strategy that you're going to drive. But what happens, why can't that person see an end to end from product all the way through? They understand the entire picture and get perspective. For me, that's been a game changer, that
Yeah.
perspective. And that perspective has just unlocked the mind, to be honest.
Yeah, and you're not the first entrepreneur I've heard say that, actually. So I totally understand that. I mean, again, let me ask you about the flip side to that. I mean, are there
Yeah.
times when you look back when you think I should have been a lot bolder? I should have stuck my neck out even further.
No, I wouldn't say that. Barring the fact that we should have branded ourselves in terms of, putting more marketing muscle power in terms of what we've done. No, there's nothing that we've done wrong, and I have no regrets. I think even if we've tripped over our shoelaces at some point, we've learned from it and we've gotten up stronger. So I have no regrets about in terms of how we've gotten here to this stage. No.
Cool. And one last question on this front.
Yeah.
If you were to give some advice to somebody starting out on your journey, what would that piece of advice be?
I do get this a lot from people who are starting off on their journey, and I always say stay true to the customer. That's critical for all of this. Um, it's about what they want. It's about what the customer needs. It's not about you. I keep using this mantra that selling won't help as much as helping will sell. You just help your customers out, and ultimately you'll end up doing well. It has to be a win-win. Never look to sell. I think that's really important, and I think that's kept us. That's dictated everything we've done,
Mm.
and it's allowed us to still, be, a little bit successful as of today, after many
Yeah.
years of navigating so much of uncertainty.
Yeah, and it's a really important point, really. I mean, if you haven't got any customers, you haven't got a business, really, have you? So it's pretty important. One final question that's not really
Yeah,
about you
sure.
and your business. It's not really about you and
Yeah.
your business. It's about where things are going. Now, we touched earlier on and we've spoken about this separately about AI. What's
Yeah.
your view on the way AI is going to shake down over the next few years? What do you, I mean, we're at the early stage. It's been around a couple of years now. I mean, what do you think the impact's going to be over the medium to long term of AI?
Um, so I've been a technologist for the last 25 years. I've seen all sorts of technologies, from hardware to servers to hosting to cloud uh, to now AI. Or before that, machine learning, predictive analytics, and finally AI. For me, AI is just another milestone on that technology curve. What comes next is quantum computing. It'll change the way our programming language evolves. It'll change the way computers are able to move at many times the speed. For me, AI is just the natural progression of technology. Will it have an impact? Yes, a massive impact. It's a huge milestone in the technology curve. It's an inflection point. My larger concern is that we're all rushing for AI, but we are not able to put guardrails around it. That would be a concern for me. So it's almost like buying a fancy car, which is really fast and you're driving down the road. But if you're not steering it right, you have a problem. So for me, responsible AI is something that we are starting to embed not only in our DNA, but also with corporates and customers as they embrace AI. So AI is going to be a game changer in terms of the macroeconomic productivity output, GDP growth rates, the faster, but it's also going to start to alienate, large chunks of society. To give you an example, the two interesting facts that I feel about AI is um, 80+% of all AI programmers and coders or people associated with creating AI are all men. So there's a lot of bias that's ingrained into the system. And once AI uses its large language models at the back end to learn, it's learning from bias and it's going to continue to evolve that bias as it progresses. So those are some of the issues that we see. The other more interesting side for us is this is the fastest route of consumerization of IT I've ever seen in my career.
Mm.
So with cloud computing, it took time for the iPhone to, upload our photographs into the iCloud, etc., for people to understand what the cloud is. But with AI, it's been very different. Not only with Gen AI, but you've got line of businesses like marketing leadership teams or HR teams. Each one of them individually believe that they can transform their organization. And they're embracing AI faster than IT is able to dish it out. So it's been fascinating for us to see this from the outside. And even more important for something which has been such a catalyst to have guardrails around it. So is it going to be the most progressive form of technology we've ever seen in our civilization? 100% yes. But it's not the be all and end all. There's more to come. And it's also responsibility as a big conversation to have right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Akhil, that's a great way to end the interview. I mean, that was a fascinating conversation. Thank you for coming and having a chat with us. Thank you for talking us through the story that and the journey that you've been on. I mean, it certainly
Thank you.
sounds interesting to me. And as always, good luck going forwards. I mean, my view on
Thank
what
you.
you've just said is that it's going to be whichever way you think about AI, it's going to be an interesting few years. Would be my take.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me. Very kind of you. Thank you.
it's been a pleasure, Akhil. See you soon.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care.